Hi everyone, in this video you're going to learn how to create a number cube. So this is actually a video for a project that I'm creating. So please be on the lookout for a project introduction. Okay, so to begin with, let's go over how to create this, right? So this is just a number cube, and also it looks kind of odd because I've extruded them outward instead of removing it or extruding it inward because I wanted to be able to make each of these a different color and make them visible, to the dots a different color and make them visible. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is, since I've created this in a separate part studio, I want to create a new one. So I'm going to create a new part studio. You don't need to do this if this is your new document. I suggest you just label your document number cube, dot cube, dice, anything. Okay, so create part studio. I'm going to label mine. Oops. Dot cube, because I feel kind of problematic saying number cube when there are no numbers on this dice. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a cube. So the standard sizes for dice can vary anywhere from 5 millimeters to even, I believe, 25 millimeters or even 50 millimeters for some dice. But I want to create a 19 millimeter dice, which is a large dice. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my top view and I'm going to create my sketch. And then I'm going to create a center point rectangle. I'll center it at the origin. And then I want to make this a cube. So I'm going to go to my constraints tool, select the equal, and select both sides. Then I'm going to go to dimension and make it 19 millimeters. And I don't need to dimension the other sides because of the equal constraint. Okay, so I'm going to click the enter green check button. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the sketch profile. Oops. And then I'm going to extrude it to create the base for the cube. Since it's a cube, we want all dimensions to be the same. So I'm going to make it 19 millimeters. So this is a really nice cube, but the problem is dice have a little bit more rounded edges more than sharp edges. So I'm going to fillet all of the sides, not chamfer. I don't want to create a beveled edge. I want to create a more smooth edge. So I'm going to select all the sides right now as much as visible. And then I'm going to go to fillet and make a 0.5 fillet, sorry. Then I'm going to fillet the remaining sides. That's it. So I'm gonna go and check. Yep, seems that all of my sides have been filleted. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is, if you've watched my previous video, you know how to interpret number cube orientations. So what I'm actually going to do is, instead of making my front view number 5, I'd like to make my first view number 1. So my front view will be the number 1. I'm creating the side which has 1 dot. So I'm going to first, I want to make it really precise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 2 construction lines. And these will be the diagonals of the square. Make sure to make it in the boundaries marked by the square, one side rather than the fillet lines, which is over here. You will get an incorrect dimension. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the center point circle, and I'm going to go and mark the exact intersection of it, right? and I'm going to create a circle. Then I'm going to go to dimension tool, and I'm going to dimension it to 3 millimeters. But all of this is good. However, I've realized that I haven't made these construction lines, and that would be a problem because when I go to extrude, Onshape will think it's part of the sketch and it'll give me an option to extrude 4 parts of the circle. I want the entire circle to be extruded, so I'm going to make these construction lines like so. So see, when I hover over it, the entire circle is highlighted. That's what we want. So this is my sketch 2. I'm going to right click and rename it so I don't get confused to, okay, where's rename? Ah, there it is. 1 dot, and I'm going to label it with the view, which is front view. So with the front view, what I'm going to do after that is I know that the next face will be the top view. So the top view from my interpretation would mean it should be the number 5. So I'm going to create a sketch on the top view. And then I'm going to repeat the same process that I did. I'll draw 2 diagonals from the boundaries in the corner, which are not by the fillet lines. Right? That's a really confusing sentence. Really, all it means is this boundary rather than this boundary, which has a curved edge. Okay. So then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make them construction, so Onshape doesn't count them as a part of my original sketch. And now it's time to create the dots. So what I first like to do is I know that there needs to be a dot here, 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 and here. So I like to do is I like to create my center first. That's going to be right over here. Then I'm going to click on the dimension tool and make it 3 millimeters. Okay. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a circle in the random places, right? Doesn't even have to be the right dimension. Just create your random circles. Okay, see how they're all weird sizes? Now I'm going to size them all to be 3 millimeters. So for that, I'm going to use my equal constraint. Select the circle you want the dimension to be. So for example, this circle has a 3 radius. I want all my circles to have 3 radius. So I'm going to select that first and then click on the second circle. So maybe it didn't work. So I'm going to first select the dimension that I want, then equate it to the second circle. Same process for everything. Basically, the center circle is like a reference point for all of them. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dimension from the center point of the center circle or from the origin to the center point of any outer circle, going to make it 9 millimeters. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the dimension the same for all of them. And I'm doing this manually, but there are more efficient ways to do this. I just want to show you one way to do it. And then voila, you have equidistant and equal dice, right? So then after that, we know that from our interpretation, opposite to 1 is 6. So that means that the opposite from the front view is the back view. So we're going to create the back view, which is going to be our 6 dots. So what we're going to do is the 6 is numbered a bit differently than the 1, 5, right? Because it's vertical rather than diagonal. So what we're going to do is we're first going to continue with the construction line idea. And we're still going to create it on the boundary. Wait, I forgot to edit the finish the sketch. Forgot to mention to finish the sketch. And I'm going to rename it. I'm going to rename it to 5 dots, and top view. So then I'm going to create a menu sketch, select the back plane, and then I'm going to create a line. It doesn't have to be in any specific measurement. It just needs to be under a vertical constraint. And you'll see it when you're dropping the line down. There will be a vertical constraint box. And see how it has a dotted line over it? That's how you know you're doing it correctly. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to dimension both of these lines 5 millimeters away from this line, right? So not the fillet line, not this line, but this line. So you're going to click on the dimension tool, select your lines, and make it 5 millimeters. Same thing over here. So now what I'm going to do is I realized how much of a pain it was to dimension each dot individually from the center, from the plane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a line down the center. This will be my mirror line. And I'm going to make this exactly in the center. So it's going to be over here. And I don't want Onshape to count these as part of my original sketch. I don't want them to count them as my dots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make all of these construction lines. So a shortcut for making construction lines is just to click all of your lines you want to make construction lines and click Q on your keyboard. And it'll be construction lines. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat a similar process as I did for my 5 dots. Just going to select, make it in a random dot, but on the construction lines. Then I'm going to go to my dimension tool and dimension each one to be 3 millimeters. There we go. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dimension each one an equal distance from each other. So I want from here to here to, actually, let's do it another way. Let's dimension this point from this point to be 2 millimeters. This point to this point, 2 millimeters. Or not. So see how it's taking a bit of experimentation? Sometimes what I like to do is I like to look at the orientation that I've set my dots in, and I like to see which placement I like best. So this one seems pretty close to what I want, except I want this top dot to be a bit lower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to dimension and check what the dimensions are already at. I see it's at 3.60. So I think I'm going to make the distance 4 millimeters. Same for this one. I'm going to check, make it 4. But the problem here is that you'll have to calculate the distance equivalent. So see how this distance is 4. You have to add another 3 millimeters to make the 7 millimeters. And same here. So, and the total length we saw was that this was 18 millimeters. The total length of this side is 17 millimeters. So we know that 18 minus 14 is 4 millimeters. So distance from each of these circles has to be 2 millimeters. Oops. Or maybe 7 millimeters just right. Okay. So since these dimensions are not working, I'm actually going to refer back here. So to my back. So I see I've made the distance from the center to be 6 and 6. Okay, so I'm going to delete all of these previous dimensions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the distance from each of these centers be 6 millimeters. Okay, let's see. What about the distance from here? Okay. So I see here that the distance, even though they were 6 and 6, they're actually a bit uneven. So in my previous example, so I'm going to make the distance between the midpoint here, 3.5, and distance between here, see what that would be, 3.48. Okay. Oh, I wanted this one to be 6 millimeters. Oh, I can actually just make this dimension 3. I'm sorry, my calculations were a bit off. Okay, so to just be clear, the total dimensions will be 6 and 6 from center points, and from the center point to the edge would be 3 millimeters. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this side to the other side because it's a symmetrical image. So I'm going to click the mirror, and I'm going to select the center line as my mirror, and I'm going to make a window to select all 3 circles. Weird. Yeah, there we go. So this is my 6th side. Okay, so now I'm going to finish my sketch and I'm going to rename it. Oop. Okay. And then when I refer back to my orientation, I know that 2 is going to be opposite to 5. So it's going to be my bottom view. Okay, I'm going to zoom it a bit. So the final thing is I want to design my 2. So for this one, I actually don't need the center point. So I don't need to create as many construction lines. Simply what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a line. I'm going to select it from here. And I'm going to select this line and click Q. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my circle. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is that I remember from my 5 cube or from my 5 dot side that the distance from the center or the origin to the mid circle was 9. So I'm going to first dimension both circles to be 3 millimeters. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to dimension from the center points to be 9 millimeters. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same for the other side. And you have your 2. So I'm going to again rename it. Okay, so now we only have a few more sides left. For this, I'm going to go back into my front view and I'm going to just check really quick. I can see that the 4 side will be on my left. So referring to this one, I'm going to see that 4 will be on my left of 1. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to create a sketch. And this is going to be pretty similar to the way I created 6. I'm going to create my 2 vertical lines this time. Okay. Excuse me. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both lines. I'm going to make them construction lines. Then I'm going to dimension from the inner side. I'm going to zoom in, not the fillet line, but to the actual solid dimension line. I'm going to make the distance 5. And then I'm going to make my center line again. So okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my circles. And then I'm going to dimension them to 3 again. And use my equal constraint. Okay. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just check back really quick to my other one. Okay, so the dimensions for these circles are actually going to be, the distance is going to be from the center points of each other, 8 millimeters. And from the edge, it's going to be 5 millimeters. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reflect these circles over the axis. So I'm going to select the mirror and I'm going to select these circles. And I'm going to click the green check button. And my last and final side is my right. And that is my 3 dots. Oh, I forgot to label this. So I'm going to click rename. 4 dots. Sorry, left. Oops. So when I zoom in, let's go and create our final sketch. And it's going to be really similar to the way we created our 5th sketch, our 5 dot sketch. So I'm going to create my diagonal line and get a construction line. And then I'm going to go and hover over the origin this time. So I can just create a circle over here. And then I can go to dimension. I'm sorry for the ringing in the background. Okay, so this one is going to be 3 millimeters. And finally, what we're going to do is we're going to create our 3 circles again, or 2 remaining circles, sorry. Then create one here, create one here. Okay, then we're going to use the equal constraint, dimension them equally. Okay, then the final thing we're going to do is we're going to make the distance between both of them 9 millimeters. And okay, so that's the end of the sketching part. So I'm going to rename it to 3 dots. Right. Okay. Then I'm going to go to isometric view and we'll get to extruding all of these shapes. I'm going to click P for this because it's easier. That just gets rid of the planes in the background. Then we're going to go to extrude and we're going to select 1 dot, the third face, and we're going to make the extrusion outward 5 millimeters. We're going to make it new so we can color each one a unique color, right? Then we're gonna go 5. Or actually, it's better to do each extrusion at once, so you know which face you're extruding. So we're gonna select that. And then we're going to select dot 5, 0.5, and we're gonna make it new. Just continue the process throughout. Okay, now that we've extruded all of the sides, what we can do is we can finally change the color. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna create the classic black and white dice. So I'm going to select part 1, which is the base of the cube, and I'm going to click edit appearance, and I'm going to make it white. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click controller command if you're on Mac, and control if you're on Windows. Then I'm going to select all the remaining parts. And then I'm going to click edit appearance, and I'm going to color them all black. Click enter, and there you have it. There's your dot cube. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and there will be a new video coming out to introduce a project that I've created for you guys on Number Cube. It's a really simple project, but other than that, I hope you've learned from this project. And yeah, thank you.